Okay. Okay, well. Let's start here.
Hey.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, good. I'm ready for this week to be done.
Yeah, you and me both, and I am not as prepared for class as I normally am. Usually, I have gone through everything pretty thoroughly, and this week I've been just been crazy first couple of days of the week. But we'll see how we go. I've got quite a few things down, a couple things I haven't had a chance to really go over. So hopefully, you could explain to me that little formula I haven't had a chance to play with.
Okay, the formulas. I'm so glad you said that because I am like, oh, I need Matt this week to explain everything. The formula is the only thing that I can figure out. So, okay, hopefully we can help each other.
That's perfect because that's the one thing I just and I just haven't had a chance to play with it yet. So I'm like crud, and I was trying to get through everything else, and I thought, well, I'll just come back to that, and I just haven't had time. So
by the way, all the resource videos do the like if you need to visually see it, they all walk through that whole process.
Okay.
Every single one, so it's just reiterated in your brain. But yeah, we can go over it for sure.
Okay, that's what I need to do then is watch all the videos. And I just, like I said, this week's been really kind of fast for me so far, and I just haven't had time to go through. Normally, I do like to watch all the videos.
I'm hearing a weird noise.
Yeah, sorry, my printer's printing something. So 1 second here, it'll be done.
Oh, okay. No, it's fine. I can hear you clear, but I was like, what is that? Is that my connection? So, okay,
yeah,
that's
no, it's
fine.
the printer.
Okay. I printed off the PowerPoint, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, I haven't, and I've skimmed through pieces of it. I just haven't got through all of it. I figured the multiplier is probably in there somewhere too, but I haven't got to it.
Yeah, I didn't. Yes, it is. It is on slides 23, it looks like. 23, 24. But yeah, I used it out of the book and then the resource videos. So, but.
Okay, yeah, there it is. I see it. Okay, well, let's get started, I guess.
Yeah, let's get started. I have a feeling that no one else is going to join us for the final week of this, but.
I don't know if they just withdrew from the class or what happened. That's kind of weird.
I don't know. I didn't check this week to see if they were still in our group, but I would think if they withdrew, they wouldn't be listed in our group. So I don't know.
If somebody went back and edited it, because my wife was telling me that right that week before, she got the email, and I didn't even see it, that this is your last week to withdrawal.
Oh, yeah, because it was so late. Yeah. That was so crazy. That's right. I got it like the day before we met up or something.
Right, and I'm wondering if maybe they all just bailed because their grades were, I don't know, who knows, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. But, okay, yes, let's begin. I did not know the answer to one. I gave an answer, but I think I get so hung up on some of the wording. I was like, I don't even really get what it's asking me.
Okay.
So I was like, Matt would just say, oh, well, common sense would say.
I got this from 21.1, and it says, which of the following actions might logically might we logically expect to result from rising stock prices? And the answer is C. Firms spend more on investment.
Okay, that's what I put with C, but you just found it in 21.1?
Yeah, I found it. Well, it doesn't come out and say it word for word, but it's like one of those ones that intimates it. And then let's back to that thing where they use the word logically in one, so I'll use it here. If you own a company and your stock prices are soaring and people are buying your stock, you have a load of cash. So your instinct is to invest it and to spend it on future things, because now you have this hoard of money that's coming in and you got to do something with it. So that's what happens is,
I feel like I can hear your voice when I'm thinking through some of these problems, because how you just said that is exactly what I did in my head. I'm like, I can't find it in the book. But Matt would say, okay, let's just think about it. In a business, what would you do? I was like, so I have C also.
Okay.
And not because I found it in the book, because I used your way of reasoning. So if you found it in the book, that's good enough for me, because that's the one that seemed to make sense. It's like, I'm going to just ask what he thinks.
Right.
So...
And there was a reference in the book in 21.1 where it talked about, like, I don't remember exactly, but it was enough of a reference that it was like, I read that and then I read this again. I'm like, okay, that's the right answer. So anyway.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, and that's where I figured it out. But I feel like when it talks about interest rates or bonds, if it uses a different word like a stock or anything like that, then I'm like, is that the same thing? So I question myself, you know. I don't really like it when they use different words for the same.
When it comes to economics, the parts that always get me confused, and I realize that it really has, because I just haven't spent enough time studying it, is when you get into like the demand curve, and then I say, okay, is that a shift along the demand curve line or a shift in the line itself? Those kinds of things. Right. I'm like, geez, really? Okay. So
yeah. Well, and that used to make sense to me, except that, like, in this chapter, if the demand shift is if the aggregate demand shifts, then that means you have to figure out the price level and then what that would affect on the interest rate, and then I'm like,
right.
Oh man.
And everything's opposite. Yeah. If the prices rise,
yes.
Interest rates fall. If the prices drop,
yes.
Interest rates go up. And, right.
Yes, it is all sorts of crazy in this chapter. Yep. Okay, well, let's power through. So we both agree on C for 1.
Right.
Okay, for 2, I got D.
So did I.
As in dog. Okay.
That's also in 21.
For 3, I got, yeah, that one I found in 21.1. 3, I got B as in boy.
Yep, me too. That one's easy. That was right off the definition. Okay. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I think I can actually just look it up, and there it was. So, okay, for 4, I have D as in dog.
So do I.
Okay. 5, I also have D as in dog.
Okay, I had D, and I changed my answer to A.
Okay. Oh, so you went completely opposite. Instead of decreases and shifts left, you think increase in shifts right. Okay, so go over with me your process, and we'll figure it out.
Okay, well, now that I'm looking at it again, I can think it's D. Let's think about this logically. I'm just talking out loud. If the Fed conducts open market purchases, meaning
I think this one's in here word for word.
Okay, but think about it this way: if it purchases, you're right. If it purchases, it's going to decrease. If it buys, same as purchase, I guess, right? If it buys, open air market buys, then it takes money out of the supply, so it's going to decrease. If it sells, it adds money. You're right. It is D. It's my original. You're right. It's D.
Okay. Yeah, and in 21.1D,
yeah,
the first paragraph, it says, when the feds sell government bonds in open market operations, it decreases the money supply and contracts the aggregate demand.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And I don't know why I confused myself. You're right. When it purchases or buys bonds, it's taking money out of the supply. So obviously it's decreasing. And when it sells, it's dumping, or when it buys, it's dumping money in. So, okay, we're good.
See, but this is another one. I felt like that looks like word for word, but it confused me. I spent a ton of time on it because, again, it says the same thing, but it uses different words. And saying selling government bonds, it says conducts open market. I'm like, Is that the same thing, or is it trying to trick me?
Right, and that's what happened.
So,
That's what happened on number one. It's not word for word, but you have to grab the meaning. I know it's a little bit frustrating. Okay, so 6.
Yeah.
I had A.
6, I had C. I had A, I erased it, and I have C.
Okay, I have 21, 1A at the second to last paragraph.
Okay, let's go there really quick.
Pull that up.
Because I had it, and I felt pretty good about it, and then I found this and was like, oh no, that's word for word what we're looking for. So let's see, where are you at?
I'm on 21, 1A, and it's down towards the bottom where it says, let's see. For example, let me see if I can find this example. Okay, at the very bottom of the second to last paragraph, it says, see where it says because bond issuers?
No? Okay. Oh, second to last.
It's the paragraph that starts.
Yeah.
Find it?
Yeah.
It says bond issuers and banks prefer to pay lower interest rates. They respond to the surplus of money by lowering the interest rates that they offer. As the interest rates fall, people become more willing to hold on to their money. So according to the liquidity preference, the opportunity cost of holding the money is got to be the interest rate. And so in this case, it's the interest rate on bonds. It's not the inflation rate and the cost of converting bonds to immediate exchange. I don't think that's right. It's the interest rate on bonds is because the interest rate is what it is. The interest rate is the governing factor. Remember, we read that specifically where it says that the cost of holding money has to do with the opportunity cost is whatever the interest rate is.
Okay. Actually, I agree with you, but I found the exact sentence. So just above that in the section it says money demand.
Okay, hold on one second. The sentence above that?
No, on that same page, but there's a whole section that says money demand. Okay, so in the second paragraph under money demand, the second sentence says the reason is that interest rate is the opportunity cost of holding money.
Right.
So it literally says exactly what you did word for word.
Okay.
So. Okay. Well, and again, it says interest rate on bonds. Like those types of little things that they throw in.
Right.
I'm like, is that the same thing? What is that?
Right. And it's, it is a little confusing. And I suppose what they're trying to do now is rather than teach us word for word, they're trying to get into more concepts, which is really hard.
Right.
But in this particular case, too, it just dawned on me, if you go back to that reasonable, logical thing, if you go through each one of those things, we could eliminate all the other answers and just leave A now. We know it's not the inflation rate. We know it's not the cost of converting bonds because that's not what it is. We know it's not the difference between the two. The only thing left is A.
Well, except that's where I get thrown off because I had C because I'm like, well, if it's talking about the opportunity cost, then that's the cost of converting it.
No.
But no, I agree.
You know what I mean? No, what I'm saying is we could go through and logically eliminate all other answers.
Right.
So I'm pretty confident that it's A.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. 100% agree with you. So, okay. All right. So for 7, I had A.
I had A also.
Okay.
And that's also in that same paragraph. So the one I was just reading before at the bottom of the page. We're good. So.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's in 20. The answer's in that second to last paragraph as well, or just below that.
Oh, okay.
Then we move on to 8.
8, I had C.
I also had C. That's word for word too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, 9, I had A with the question mark. Okay.
Well, it's interesting because I played around with this one for a little bit too, and this is one of those ones where we know that things are going to go down. So the reality is once again, if you start thinking about it, it has to go. A decrease in the price level is the only option available here because everything else doesn't really make sense based on what they're describing. So it's got to
well,
be.
And this is where I started having questions because, like you and I were saying, if the price level goes up, the interest rate goes down. And this example is talking about interest rate.
No.
So if the interest rate is, so that's where I was getting myself caught up. But yeah, I in the end went with a decrease in the price level. I was like, no,
but remember,
I'm starting to overdo it, I think.
Right, but remember, they're not talking about interest rates anymore now. It says on the figure, it says it's the money supply demand curve. That's all we're talking about. So when it says which of the events would shift the money demand supply curve, what shifts it, remember, if there's a decrease in price.
Well, okay, you're saying that weird though. It's not the money supply demand because those are two different things. It's just saying the shift of the money demand.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but like if you read the question where it says MS represents the money supply and MD is the money demanded, right? So the money supplied is now shifting downward, and the money demand is also shifting downward. Okay, the price has dropped. So the only thing that can cause that
but
to shift.
Remember, on this, it's not price that it's showing interest rate.
Understood. But what would decrease the money demanded? Okay, here we go. Let's just take the opposite for a second. If price levels go up, right, what do people want to do with their money? If everything at the store that you're going to buy doubled, would you carry more or less cash in your wallet?
I'd have to have more to buy it, but I probably just wouldn't carry it.
Right. Okay, right. No, I understand. But I'm saying logical, you'd carry more cash, right?
Right.
So
if I was going out with the intent to purchase, knowing that things were more expensive, I would have more money.
Right. So let's just take the opposite now. What if everything was half price tomorrow? Would you take less or more cash?
Less cash. Well, more cash to buy more stuff.
Okay, but in the long run, you would need less cash to survive, right?
Right. So the demand would shift to the left.
Right. So that's a decrease in price level.
Okay. Well, I don't know why we're talking about it. We both have the same answer.
We do. Okay.
We're going on and on. The same.
Now this one, this 10 is a little confusing to me.
Okay.
What did you come up with? Because I came up with a big nothing.
I came up with D, and I have a reference.
What's your reference, please?
So 21, 1B. Where am I at?
Well, here's my question on this. You know how they have the arrows here? Up, down, up, down?
Yeah.
I was trying to follow that part. So if I forget that and say the price level then equals this equals that, that was more logical to me. But with the arrows going which way they were, I was like, man, what are they trying to tell me with the whole deal there?
They talk this way in our resource video, but basically saying if the price level decreases or increases, then the demand for money would increase or decrease based on that, which would then affect the equilibrium rate, which would then affect, like, from this to that to that. If this happened, then what would this happen, then this, then that. That's what it's saying.
I see. So if the price level goes up or down, then this would happen. So in theory, if the price level goes up or down, that would affect the equilibrium rate. But it would also affect demand for money. Demand for money.
So this is where I went with it. So I chose D, and I went with 21, 1B, and in the middle of the page, there's an FYI, and I went with the paragraph right before the FYI.
Middle of the page.
Okay, so towards the middle of the page, there's an FYI on 1B. It says interest rates in the long run. So right above that, in that paragraph before it, you can even see P1 to P2, M1, MD, whatnot. So in this is how I read it. So when the price level rises, the demand for money increases. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't find one of those where that happened. Oh, I did on B. So then I was like, oh, okay, so B is starting to be it. But then it says, so then there's a raise in the interest rate and the demand falls. So that's where B is knocked out. So then D is this same sentence, only reversed. So instead of the sentence saying increase, I just swapped the words. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
So I run, okay, if the price level decreases, then the money demand would decrease, the interest rate would decrease, and the quantity would increase. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just to be clear, you're saying if the money demand goes up, then the interest rate goes. If the money demand goes down, then the interest rate goes down.
Okay, yeah. So let's just read the sentence. So in it, let's just ignore the question. The sentence says, if the price level rises, then there's an increase in the money demand, and the interest rate will raise. But the quantity of goods and services will fall to create an equilibrium, to create a new equilibrium.
Okay.
So if the price level increases and then the money demand increases, that money demand shift has shifted to the right, which then bumps it up higher at a higher price and a higher interest rate on that money supply. Well, if you want to get back to the old equilibrium, then we have to have the quantity demanded fall back.
That's how you came up with D?
That's how I came up with D based on that sentence. It's the only place in the book where I had all of those same things in one spot, and it talked about if this, then that, then that, then that. So that's what I went with. And I honestly went with this final answer because I eliminated the other ones. So like if we start with A, the price level increases, the demand for money decreases.
Right.
That is not how this works.
Right. So read D to me then that follows the logic of what you just described. So if the price level...
Okay, so... Yeah, so I'm reading it just the opposite in the book as I am here. So in the book, it would say if the price level increases, then the interest rate would increase. So that would lead me to believe that if the price level decreased, then the interest rate would also decrease.
Okay.
Let's see here, though.
But if the price level decreases, it wouldn't raise the demand for money, would it?
Well, except that it wouldn't it? Wouldn't we just talk about that?
Right. If the price level decreases, we just talked about that. The demand curve for money is going to drop if the price level decreases.
Yeah.
Hold less money in their hands.
Okay, so then let's see about this. So maybe I'm reading it wrong. So let's see. So let's go back to, let's just eliminate them all then. Do you want to start with A?
Yeah, 1 second.
And we'll just go down and eliminate them really quick.
Make sure that what I'm, that my, hold on 1 second here.
Yeah, because I can understand what you're saying and now I'm questioning, but this is, I still follow the same resource in the book of like, okay, we just need to figure out what starts, then what the actual consequence would be, and then the next step would be, and then the next step.
We're on chapter 20, right?
21. Okay, so if we even go onto the graph, it tells us exactly. I don't know how it relates to the answer, but if you look at the graph above it in figure 2, it labels those two things. So you've got B, which is the aggregate demand curve, and A, which is the money market. And if you look at the little yellow squares, it says 1, an increase in the price level, jumps over to the other graph, and then it says 2, increases the demand for money. 3 increases the equilibrium interest rate, which is the quantity of goods and services demanded. So I think that's our answer, and now we just have to see which of these fits that scenario.
Okay, so here's a thing I just found too that will get me back on track a little bit. And this is where it gets so confusing, where you have to like dissect, like you said, and then you overthink it. Okay, as the price level rises, people want to buy fewer bonds. Because the bond market gets soft, then interest rates rise. So as the price level rises, interest rates actually rise.
Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to think this through, because I want to make sure, like, as we're just going through what you just described.
Yep. And so does the demand, because if prices are higher, you have to have more cash on you to buy something if you go somewhere.
Correct.
So we have an increase in price, an increase in demand, and an increase in interest rate. But it's saying, which in return reduces the quantity of goods and services demanded, because all of those things going up, people don't want as much because they're having to pay too much.
Right. Okay, right. Because then I just found in the reference, as the price level rises, interest rates rise, and the value of the dollar falls. Value of the dollar falls, which then, like we just talked about, causes you to want to hold.
Value of dollar
it isn't worth
in this case, is the quantity demanded. The value falls because people don't want as much because it costs too much.
Right. So as the price level falls, so does the interest rate. As the price level rises, so does the interest rate. But the value of the dollar is the opposite.
So I actually kind of think, okay, take a look at C with me.
Okay.
Okay, so if the price level fell, the demand would fall, and the equilibrium, the interest rate would fall. But then the quantity and services demanded would increase because now people can afford them more.
As the price level falls, the demand for money would fall. The equilibrium interest rate would then begin to fall. And that would equal the quantity.
So people would want more.
Okay, so as the price level...
Cheaper prices means you don't have to have as much money. And it means lower interest rates. So people would want more to purchase more things at that time because everything is inexpensive. Because they don't need as much money.
Right, but like, let's take... This is where it's weird to me. So, you know how they have the arrows here for the price level? One going up and one going down?
Yeah.
So, if I just read like A, for example, you're reading that the price level is going up?
Yeah.
So why do they have the arrow going down on the left under price?
It's just the end of the sentence. The next sentence goes under it.
So like the demand for, so they're saying that equals the quantity of demands and services would go down. The arrow should be down over there, you think?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Because even if you look at question 9, like just look at it just as like a reference, when it says refer to figure 34.4, which of the following would explain the shift on the money demand curve from MD1 to MD2.
Okay, so
it's not saying refer MD2 to figure 34.
Got it.
You know, it's just the end of the sentence. It didn't fit on the page. It went down to the next line.
Perfect. So I think you're right. Let's take a look at this really quickly and just kind of go through which ones we know don't fit, and then we'll work our way back.
Right.
So if the price, let's start with that. If the price level rose, the demand for money should go down. So A count.
So we know A is not right.
That's a no bueno. Okay.
Right.
On B, if the price level rises, the demand for money could rise. That's true.
Right.
The equilibrium interest rate would not go down.
Right.
It would have to.
So it's not.
So that's also no good. But the demand for quantity of goods and services would drop. Right?
Right. If the price level went up, that the end would be, but the interest rate.
The middle is a little bit of a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go to C and the price level goes down, the demand for money goes down. That's true. The equilibrium interest rate would then go
down.
Quantity of goods and services would go up. So C looks pretty good so far.
C looks good to me also. Let's do D.
Go to D and the price level goes down. The interest rate goes down. The demand for money goes up. That doesn't make sense. So it
right.
C.
It has to be C out of process of elimination.
I
The only
agree.
one that works.
It's the only one that actually
Okay.
you can walk all the way through.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
On 11, I had an answer and I changed it, so I'm interested to see what you have.
Okay.
I
have A.
Okay, good. I had B, but then I changed it to A,
Okay.
and I found the answer. I think that's why I was just saying. So, I think
Okay.
if we had both, and let's move on.
Okay. Yeah, we agree. Okay.
Okay, now we're on to where'd it go? 12, right?
Number 12. Yeah.
Now this is back to that formula thing. So
Yeah. So the MPC is just the percentage of money that people are spending. So if they have a total of $10,000, but they're only spending $6,500, what is that percentage?
okay, well that's 65%.
Right. Yep, exactly. So I will say.
But then it says when the income. So it's 60. If you do the math, then the next one also is the same at 65% basically.
Yeah, it's like 64.8 or something like that. And I even looked at the other ones and the other math. I just went and did the math on the others, and it didn't. Neither of them worked out that way. In fact, I can do it again right now.
That's okay.
So I just did 6,500 divided by 10,000 to get 0.65, and then 7,250 divided by 11,000 gave me 65.9.
Hold on, 65.9.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I'm just making sure C isn't correct. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But 0.664. So if people spent 0.664 of 11,000,
Yeah.
that gives us 7,304. So I feel pretty good that it's A, because both of those are in the 65%. One's just rounded, one's just a higher decimal.
So the MPC is just the percentage of the money that people spend. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
And in a very simplistic term.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
So, yeah.
So 13, as real GDP falls, the demand for money rises, and so does the interest rate then begins to fall. No, that's not right. What'd you have? The interest rate rises?
I have C. Yeah, I have the money demand falls and the interest rate rises. Money demand.
Wait a minute.
Okay, I think I was thinking of.
I'm not sure that.
No, I think I read that wrong. I was thinking money demand is my quantity output shifting left, because they both look the same on the graph. But that's not. I believe that that's not right. So as my real GDP, that's my total quantity wanting to move left. That would make my interest rise and my money demand rise.
Right.
So let's see what the answer is. So A. And I'm doing that based off of our last one of 10 that you and I discussed.
Correct. And on my note, I just had that it had to be A or B, because if GDP is falling, then the demand for money should be rising.
Right, and so should the interest rate.
Right, because we just looked that up. That
Yeah.
the demand for money rises, so does the interest rate.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we both agree on A then, right?
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Falls. Looking up.
Okay, so I think in 21, 1C, at the bottom it says to sum up.
Yeah.
And so let's see. If there's an increase in the quantity and goods of services demanded, then the demand curve would shift right, which would lower the interest rate. But if the money supply raised, meaning the price, because the price would go,
Right.
the interest rate, it raises the interest rate, and reduces the quantity of goods and services, which are GDP. Okay, so I think it's this last sentence, just worded different. So the quantity of goods and services is our real GDP, correct?
Yeah.
So if that reduces it or falls, then it's this sentence. So when it falls, the interest rate rises, the money supply shifts to the left, and at any price level. Everything shifts to the left. Which goes back to that other graph.
Right. I'm thinking a couple things.
Okay.
One is GDP is the amount of basically purchasing power that each person has in the thing, like what you're actually, you know what I mean?
Well, the GDP is what we're actually spending. So it's like our government purchases, our investments, what we bought.
Right, but spending and income go hand in hand.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So if
I was thinking when you said income, I'm thinking like just the amount of money someone has, but that's not what it is. It's what they're earning and what they're spending.
Right. It's a combination.
Okay. Yes.
So what I mean by that is let's walk it out just one little further step, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
If GDP falls, and it happens repeatedly over the course of just a couple of quarters, they say that we're in a recession. If we're in a recession, people are going to cling to their money, and interest rates are also going to rise, correct?
That's my understanding.
Right. That's what.
Not in the long run. In the long run to fix it, but most of this is short run. Like that's what this whole chapter is. In the long run, they would eventually lower the interest rates so people could afford things, stimulating spending, and then they would do government purchases and ship the money, you know, like all that stuff.
Right.
But for this, if we're just looking at it as like, okay, what happens if people's income falls, they have to have more money, prices are rising, you know, either prices are rising or their income falls, but either way it falls that same way on the curve. So the interest rate is rising and the demand for the money that they would have to have rises.
Yeah, I had A or B, and I'm leaning towards A, but I just want to like have one more thing to confirm it to make sure. How do you feel about it?
I feel fine with A. Yeah, it makes sense to me that that's what it would be.
All right.
So
okay. So then on 14,
okay.
The formula is the reverse of what we just talked about then, right?
No. In this one, we have to find the multiplier. So you have the percentage that people are probably going to spend, but then when you're talking about how much money that could accumulate throughout the, you know, throughout the economy. So people have been given this extra money. They're not spending it all. They're spending only a portion. But that's still more than what they originally were spending, which then they've spent that, which gives someone else extra money, which gives someone else extra money.
Right, it's the loaning thing where if you loan it out.
Yep, exactly.
So
exactly. However, in this case, we have to figure out what the multiplier is, and there's a formula for it. So
that's the one that's on that slide.
Yeah, so if you want the formula for the multiplier, I'm sure it's on one of the slides I had originally been looking at. Formula for the multiplier
22
is
got part of it.
On slide 23.
Uh-huh.
You'll see a little highlighted box that says the multiplier with an arrow.
Okay.
It's 1 over 1 minus MPC.
1 over
equals
1
the multiplier.
MPC. And the MPC in this case is that 0.8?
Yep, that's that percentage. So you're going to do 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8, which gives us 0.2.
So 1
divided by 0.2 equals 5.
Got it. So 600
So
billion.
then it's saying, yeah, so if someone has 120, you times it by the multiplier of 5 and you get 600.
So it's 1 divided by 0.2 gets you 5. Okay.
Right.
5.
And just for
5.
future reference, that's 1 over 1 minus whatever that MPC is.
Got it. I'm making a note here so I can study from that later. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That formula can also be reversed because in some cases they'll give you the multiplier and you have to figure out the MPC. So then you go 5 equals 1 over 1 minus MPC, you know, and then you just figure out, you solve for that. So that formula I found really handy.
Yeah, okay. I can see why that would be the case. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Got it. So this goes on to the scenario case for the next one, right? A little bit? Not really, I guess.
Kind of. Now this one in the end, I guessed because it makes the most sense.
Well, can we use that?
If you've got something, I'll listen, but if not, I'll explain what I've got. What do you have?
No, go ahead. Hit me.
Oh, okay. So I went with A. And the reason is because I figured out what the multiplier would be. So I could figure out my MPC because I know how much they're spending of their total. So my MPC is 0.84 on average, 0.8339 or something, and then 0.84. So they're like the same. And when I figured out the multiplier, whether I did them separately or individually, the highest number I got was 6.25 and the lowest was 5.85. I went with the highest because in the end they just averaged out. So then I took that multiplier and I times it by the answers to see which one got me the closest to that aggregate demand increase of 1,500.
Okay.
Now, when I did the multiplier by 550, I got well over $3,000. And I thought, well, in my head, there would have to be significant things happening more than just crowding out to get that amount to be less than half at 1,500. So I eliminated 550 as my answer. Now at 300, I got like $1,800. And I figured, okay, $1,800 minus some of the crowding out would bring it back down. And I did that based on the reading in section 2E about crowding out.
Well, on my notes, what I have is that it has to be A or it has to be B. Because because the stock market boom simulates consumer spending, not the other way around. So the question I had really is there an operative crowding out effect in A, or is there a small operative crowding out effect in B?
Well, if it was a small crowding out, there's no way you could get it down to 1,500 because the answer is well over. So 6.25 times 1,500 would increase the, or let's see, not 1,500, 550 times the multiplier increases the money supply, money demand by 37.50. So if it's saying that the aggregate demand increased to 1,500, I just don't see that with a number as high as 550, even with a crowding out, but especially if it's a small crowding out. So that's why I went with the 1,500, or with the A.
So if you don't mind, let me ask you a few questions really quick, just to follow along, because you're better at this formula, because I just haven't played around so much. So if consumer spending on the first one, they give it, and the second one, you're saying the MPC was about 0.84, right?
Right.
So that would leave us
if you average the two together, it's 0.835. So I just rounded it. Okay,
so if we use the 0.84, we're going to get a 0.16 left, right? So you took 1 and divided that by 0.16, right?
No, my multiplier is now 6.25 is what I got, right?
Right. I got you. 6.25.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
So
I have my final answers written.
Yeah. That's fine. You went through the whole step. So they're saying if the stock market boom stimulates consumer spending by $300,
right? Using that multiplier, what is going to get you the closest to a $1,500 increase in your total aggregate demand?
Right. So we get.
So if you do 300 and times it by your multiplier, or 550 by your multiplier, you're going to get different answers.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense, the process that I'm thinking?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Right.
As long as you're feeling good, I don't mind talking through it, or if I'm way off base, if it's really not making sense, I want you to.
No. It's making sense. It's definitely making sense.
So then I went with, as you're going through that, let's see. So I have 2E with big asterisks next to it.
Well, now let's talk about the crowding out effect for a second.
Yeah. So I went with that in the sum up at the bottom
of 2E.
Of 2E, where it talks about crowding out. The very last sentence, it says the crowding out effect pushes the demand curve in the opposite direction, and if large enough, could result in an aggregate demand shift of less than 20 billion. And 20 billion is the number they were, saying, like, hey, if they increased it to 20, that's the example they used in the reading.
Yeah, I got you. I'm looking at that too.
But to me, what that's saying is, if you use the crowding out effect, it's gonna then take the money you got, like, yeah, you had this increase, but then it pushes it back just slightly to get it back under control. You may have a multiplier of 1,800, but because of that crowding out effect, it's going to push that demand just a little bit back. So you don't get that full 1,800, even though the multiplier indicates so.
Right. So that by that definition, it could not be D. Is that what you think? Because there has to be some crowding out effect.
Right. Right. If you had no crowding out, the math just doesn't go to 1,500 on either of them. You're above it, and that's just how it is. You have to have some type of crowding out effect in order for you to get to the 1,500 it says you got to.
Got it. Okay, I'm with you. So then I agree. By process of elimination, it seems like it has to be A.
Yeah. So I agree with you when you were saying it could be A or B, because they both say that there is a crowding out effect.
Right.
But because B gets you such a large number, and it's saying you use such a small portion of a crowding out, I just don't see how that could be the answer logically in my head.
Yeah.
I did not find the specific scenario in any of the reading, but based on the formula, the numbers you get, and the description, this makes the most sense to me.
Right. I would be happier with the answer if they flipped it around and said that, like, there's a small crowding out effect for A and an operative crowding out effect for B.
Right.
But nonetheless, okay.
Right.
Let's go with A. The next one on 16, I had D.
What was that?
On 16, I had D.
Okay, I also had D.
Okay. On 17, I had A or C.
Okay. I had D, so I had none of those.
So let's
talk.
17.
Okay, so I went to where they stabilized output on 3A.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. One more time. Someone's trying to call me and I didn't take the call.
Yeah, no, you're just fine. I'm in 3A.
Uh-huh.
The case for active stabilization.
Back to 3A. And where are you at? I'm sorry.
Oh, so I'm at the beginning. I'm just at the end of that first paragraph where it says, if the Federal Reserve wants to prevent the adverse effect of the fiscal policy, it can expand demand by increasing money supply.
Hold on. That's the end of the first paragraph of 3A?
3A.
If the monetary
policy... well, it's like the middle. Okay. I guess I'm at the middle of that first paragraph.
The Federal Reserve wants to prevent
the Federal Reserve.
Can expand.
Yeah, and I reread this one a million times because, again, the wording isn't the same. So if you get a different meaning from it than I did, but my understanding was, okay, we're having too much in net exports, which in my head is too much of something, so they're wanting to contract that.
Well,
So I looked at it as if we had too much money and they want to bring it in. That's where my head was at.
okay, so I hear what you're saying. So let me tell you my understanding of what we're describing, setting aside that for just a second.
Yeah, talk to me.
Exports in the U.S. go way up when the dollar decreases in value.
Okay.
So if the dollar increases in its value, then nobody wants to spend them because it will cost more money overseas. So when our dollar decreases, our net exports go up. So if they wanted to decrease the net exports, they would have to increase the value of the dollar. So which of those scenario cases would increase the value of the dollar?
Wait, what? Start again.
Sure. If there is an increase in net exports, that means that the dollar has fallen in its value. It's what it's worth. Okay?
Okay, sure.
So if the feds want to increase the value of U.S. currency, what do they have to do that?
Okay. We need to increase the value. We would need to, let me go back to this. Okay. We would need to decrease the quantity demanded by increasing our price level and our interest rate and our money supply. Right? Is that what you're saying? You're saying we need to increase the money supply and increase the interest rates?
I'm just thinking. I know what, here's the thing. I know what needs to happen. In other words, I know that we got to increase the dollar, the value of the dollar. That's how we're going to stop exports or slow them down. So which of those scenario cases, and I'm not saying I have the answer exactly, I'm saying, but which of those 4 scenario cases would increase the value of the dollar?
Okay.
Because that's what needs to happen, right? And you follow what I'm my logic there?
So if the value of the dollar,
if the value of the dollar, let's go back to our graph on 34 dash, which is the one.
That's where I'm back at again here.
So if the value of the dollar is X and you want to increase the value of the dollar, money supply drives down the price, correct? So if they flood the market with money, it increases demand and that drops the price a little bit?
Right. So then people are out spending more.
If you contract the money supply, that's going to increase the price and raise interest rates. Right?
Well, now I don't know. My mind is all over the place.
No. I think you're onto the right thing. I think if you decrease the money supply, that's going to drive up the cost in the United States, which would then decrease exports.
Okay, so here's what I do know. I do know that if we decrease the money supply, interest rates will raise. If we increase the money supply, interest rates will reduce. The question is, which would the Fed want to do to stabilize our output? So we do know that the correct answer cannot be B or C, right? Because if they decrease the money supply, the interest rates won't reduce, right? That just wouldn't happen. And if they increase the money supply, the interest rates will decrease.
Right. So the answer's got to be
right. So B and C are
it's got to be A or D.
A or D. We just have to decide if they're going to move that shift to the right or move that shift to the left.
Right. I agree with that.
Right.
And I'm
okay.
I'm kind of thinking that your initial response is correct. That the answer is probably E. Hold on one second. This is where they're starting to really put everything together for us, because now you have to think back on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what affects? Like, okay, so that affects this.
Right. You can't. There's not just like, oh, well, then it's just a shift up to the left. It's like, okay, What result would you have if all these things happen?
All right, I found an answer to the opposite question
Okay.
on a little. If I search, like do a Google search for it, it says, suppose there was a large decline in net exports. If the Fed wanted to stabilize the output, it would buy bonds to lower interest rates.
Okay.
If there was a net decline in exports.
Right.
So
since we have an increase,
they
would
want to
increase the supply and raise the rates.
Yes.
Okay.
So we want them to, instead of, when they buy bonds, they're taking money out. So we wouldn't want them to do the opposite of that. We would want them to increase the money supply, which would
decrease. Increase the rate.
Increase the money supply, which will increase the interest rates. That's so it reading this answer of the opposite, it sounds like it would be C, huh?
Yeah, what you're saying sounds like C, but I thought we eliminated that, so now I'm super confused.
Me too. But I'm just looking at this one answer. It says, suppose there was a large decline in net. That's the opposite of what we're talking about. If the Feds wanted to stabilize output, it could buy bonds to lower interest rates. So if we have too much exports, we want to increase interest rates. If we need to increase interest rates, yeah, you're right. Okay, I could see why we were a little confused. Remember, we talked about that. If the prices go up, interest rates go up. The money supply goes up. See, if the money supply goes up, that doesn't drive up the price, it drives down the price, right? This is where it gets really confusing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It is very confusing. Yeah, I don't know the answer to 17. I mean, it seems counterintuitive to everything I'm thinking. Like I can't get my mind set on what I think the right way of looking at it is.
Yeah. I feel like it talks about this here. Just gonna look for just another second.
I'm as confused as ever on this one.
Okay, let's see. Well, let's just read this. Okay, so the case for stabilization. I'm just going to go back to the same paragraph we were at, which again does not respond to this, but it tells us what will happen to the money. So it says a monetary expansion reduces interest rates. And it just says that.
Okay.
So now then it also talks about stimulate investment spending, aggregate demand expands, but that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the supply of money and the effect on the interest rate. So if there is an expansion or an increase on money supply, the interest rates decrease, which means that if we decrease the money supply, so that puts us back at A or D as the answer. The question then is just which way do we think they would go? I think we're over confusing it by looking at outside sources just in this case because it's looking specifically at stabilization. And that's what it's telling us happens when the Fed does something with the money supply.
Right. So
I say let's simplify it and go back to one of those two effects will happen. We just have to decide why they would choose one or the other. Would they increase the money supply or would they decrease it?
Right.
Now, if we have large net exports and we want to decrease our exports, That
hold
means
on
we want more people here by
30 seconds. I'll be right
Is that
back.
what
I
you're
just
saying?
gotta. Can you give me like
Yeah,
30
you're-
seconds? I'll
Yeah,
be
you're
right back.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, you're just fine. But while you're gone, I think that I may be on to something that I think you can bring together for us. Okay, so we found in stabilization what would happen if we increase the supply or decrease the supply. So we've narrowed it down to A or D. So then I just went back to the beginning. I'm at 21.1. And this is where it talks about the wealth effect, the interest rate, and the exchange rate effect. I feel like the exchange rate effect explains what happens when we do net exports. And I think that if we use your fabulous mind to interpret what that really means, then we might be able to come up with what an answer.
And you're in 21.1,
Uh-huh.
just straight up the very beginning.
Right at the very beginning. And it lists out the different effects on the aggregate demand. The wealth
Okay.
effect,
The
interest
exchange
rate,
effect?
exchange rate.
Okay. When a lower
Yeah.
price level reduces the interest rate, investors move some of their funds overseas in search of higher returns. This movement of funds causes the real value of the next. That's what we talked about. I said that when
Right,
when
exactly.
exports go up,
Exactly.
domestic currency falls in the foreign market. Domestic goods becomes less expensive, right? So relative to foreign goods. This is the real rates. Okay. This change in the real exchange rate stimulates spending on net exports and thus increases the quantity of goods and services demanded. Right. Okay. That part we understand. That part I have down pretty good.
So what I'm thinking with this, plus what we've already done, is this is saying if people are wanting to encourage their net exports, then they increase the quantity of goods and demand services, like supplied, right?
What I'm saying, what this is saying is that, okay, let me give you a real world scenario case.
Yeah.
This way. Let's say you wanted to go visit Japan.
Right.
And right now the exchange rate was $1 for 100 yen, right?
Okay.
But let's say the dollar value fell. So if somebody from Japan, better way of putting it, somebody from Japan wants to come to the United States, 100 yen buys $1. So basically a penny for a penny, if you will, right?
Okay.
100 yen equals $1. But
Okay.
the value of the dollar falls. So now 100 yen buys $1.25. So I want to come to America if I'm Japanese because my 100 yen, instead of getting $1, I get $1.25. It just became cheaper to come here. It became cheaper to buy a Hershey's candy bar. Instead of a Hershey's candy bar costing me 100 yen, now it's only going to cost me like 80 yen because the dollar fell. So
Right.
what you're saying is,
So we want the dollar value to increase.
Yeah, we want to increase the value of the dollar so that it gets back to that 1-to-1 ratio. We need the dollar value to come up.
Which means we need the price to go down. Is that right? We learned that in a different chapter.
We need the price level to rise. Right? We want things in the United States. If things in the United States, it isn't really about the price level. It's more about what's happening to the value of the dollar.
Right. But my understanding was from not the last chapter, I think the one before, was that when we are talking about the value of the dollar, if we have a higher price, the value of our dollar is less because we can't buy as much.
Right. So we want our price to go. You're right. We want the price to go up.
We want the price to come down so we can afford more, right? So our value is more. Our dollar buys us more things. If things cost less, we can buy more stuff with it. So we want the price to come down so our value comes up. Is that right?
The value of the dollar. Right. So price would come down, value of the dollar goes up.
Right, because now we can purchase more with that dollar because prices are lower.
Right.
So if that's what we're trying to do, to increase our value, we want prices to decrease, which means we would want interest rates to decrease. So then you're saying it would be A, because we would increase our money supply, which would decrease our interest rates and our price, which long term would then increase the demand for those goods.
Right, domestically. Right, so if we increase the money supply, we're going to drive down the price. You're all of a sudden your dollar is worth more in the short term, right?
Right.
It buys more stuff because the price goes down. If the price goes down, the interest rate's also going to come down.
Okay. Yes, we agree on that.
Yeah. I think the answer is A, but I'm just not convinced, you know? Like,
yeah,
it hasn't clicked in my head yet where to go, that's the answer.
Yeah, I feel like A is going to be, so far, is the most realistic based on everything we've been discussing. But I still say it could be between A and D, but based on everything we've talked through, if that's what we would do to help stabilize too much in our exports, then A would be the answer. If to stabilize our net exports, we need to increase our value, then we would increase our money supply, reducing interest rates and price levels.
Yeah, like I said, I can make the argument for both as the problem, but I think A is the right answer. You know what I mean?
Well, and I agree. So as I read this exchange rate, I'm just gonna word it. So in this case, we are wanting to get more imports. We are wanting to invest overseas and reduce our exports, correct? That's what we are wanting to do, rate-wise. So when I look at the exchange rate and I'm thinking if this is what I want to be doing, then I would have a lower price level, which reduces the interest rate. So as an investor, I'm going to move my funds overseas in search of a higher return. This movement of my funds causes the real value of my currency to fall in the market for foreign exchange. Domestic goods become less expensive relative to foreign goods. This change in the real exchange stimulates spending on net exports and thus increases quantity of goods and services.
So I think it's A. Right? That's what we're saying. Increasing the money supply. Reducing goods.
Okay, yeah, so let's just think about that too, just for 1 second more, as I read the whole paragraph in the sense of if I'm going to make this plan. So it sounds like that's what happens. The lower price levels, interest rate, I'd go overseas. But what that happens for me with domestic is that everything here becomes less expensive relative to a foreign good. That stimulates spending on net exports and thus increases the quantity of goods and services demanded. So, I mean, I'm now wanting to go back to D. Don't kill me.
Nope, it's okay. Read that one more time. Wherever you read
Okay,
that.
so it is saying that when I want to invest overseas, how I'm reading it is the first half of this. And then the second half, when I get to domestic goods, that's going to be the consequence. So this is my action when I want to invest overseas, and this is what happens domestically. So I'm going to just read it again with that in mind. When a lower price level reduces the interest rate, an investor will move my funds overseas in search of higher returns. This movement of funds causes the real value of domestic currency to fall in the market for foreign currency exchange. So domestic goods become less expensive relative to foreign goods.
Okay, hold on.
This exchange.
Hold on. So that's what causes net exports to happen. So in relative terms to foreign goods, U.S. goods are cheaper to purchase than, say, Japanese goods. So the value of the dollar has fallen relative to foreign markets. That's what causes net exports to happen. I'm just kind of thinking through what you're saying. So I understand that part. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so then the domestic goods become less expensive.
Right.
So we're not going to import as much. And so that stimulates spending on net exports and thus increases the quantity of goods and services demanded. So if we're exporting too much stuff,
we need to start importing. The value of the dollar has to go up.
Okay, yeah, I think we agree. The value of the dollar needs to go up, then we need to reduce interest rates and prices. So I think we're both at A. Right?
Yeah, I'm if I had to place a bet on this, my gut feeling says it's probably A, but like I said, I'm not like, it hasn't like clicked yet where I'm like, okay, that's the right answer. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I'm in the exact same spot. I'm gonna keep a little asterisk next to it, just so that we know, like, hey, if we pick one, that's probably it.
Okay.
But I think we both feel comfortable, like, since we don't know, we both are agreeing that A is the one that we both feel the best about.
Yes.
Even though we're not 100%.
Great.
Okay. So let's move on.
Okay.
18, I had B as in boy.
Okay, and I did not have an answer for that, so just walk me through your thought process real quick if you don't mind.
Okay, this one I did use a slide 12 and 13.
Slide 12 and 13?
That's what I have for my note. Who knows what it really is. Okay, let's see. Okay, which of the following is correct based on the graph? Oh, okay, on slide 13, there was that picture. So
from
that's
AD1
what I have.
to AD2. Got it.
Yep. Okay, so on that it says the Fed can raise R by reducing the money supply, which then reduces the aggregate demand. Okay, so that led me to believe that we could do fiscal changes, like the government can do it. But then also it says monetary policy, and it says on slide 12, oh, I don't know. I think because it said monetary policy and it had stuff about the Fed doing it, I went with both can be done. I don't know why I have this system. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I remember, because it made the most sense and I was able in my head to eliminate the other two.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Just for a second.
Yeah. Okay, let's do.
If we're at A, right?
Yeah.
And we fall to B, unemployment would rise. No. Yeah, the demand has dropped. Price has dropped, but so has the demand. So we're in like a recession there. That's, well, kind of. Let's go back to this one. If the economy is left alone, then the economy moves from point B to a long-run equilibrium. Price level will fall further. Why would it fall further if it moves to equilibrium?
Well, actually, yeah. So if it is left alone, then you would stay if the demand went over. The long run supply doesn't change because that's the long run. It's constant. That's why it's vertical. So if everything is left alone and they don't do anything with the supply, eventually the prices would eventually fall and make a new equilibrium.
So the answer could be D.
Yeah, so the answer could be D.
Because I can make an argument that A definitely applies.
Okay.
I think you're right.
And we just made an argument that C does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to go with D. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. 19, okay. I had C.
I also had C.
Woo! Okay.
Finally. And on 20, I had C.
I didn't finish C. So
this one, I did the process of elimination, and it's just under, I didn't write my note, but I know where it is.
Okay.
So it is under 21.3B.
Okay. Opponents of, I looked for that. The opponents of active stabilization policy believe some effects of monetary policy may be long-lived.
So at first, I couldn't find C, word for word. I found that concept, and then in the end, I did find it. But what I did was I could find A, B, and D all in there as incorrect answers.
Okay, and that was in 3B, you said?
Yeah, so in 3B, they don't believe the fiscal policy can stabilize the economy. That's not true. It actually says...
Actually, you know what? We just got lucky. Look at 3B, paragraph 2, first sentence.
Yeah, with a long lag. Okay, I'm like, I swear, when I went back, I found it in the words, but I had originally done the process of elimination.
It's C.
Yeah, so it's C.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt really good about that.
Okay, so let's go back over where we think we're at on all of these, and which ones we might have a question on.
All right, mine are all out of order here really quick. Hang on.
Sure.
Okay, all right. I'm good.
For 1, I have C. For 2, I have D. 3, I have B as in boy. 4, I have D as in dog. 5, I have D as in dog. 6, I have A. 7, I have A.
Yes.
8, I have C.
Okay.
9, I have A.
Yes.
10, I have C.
Yes.
11, I have A.
Yes.
12, I have A.
Yes.
13, I have A. 14,
yes.
I have C.
Yes.
15, I have A. That's the one we put a pin in because we spent so much time on it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
16, I have D. 17,
yes.
I have A, but we also have a pin in that one.
Yep.
18, let's see. 18, I have D with a pin in it,
yes.
but we think that's correct. 19, I have C,
sure.
and 20, I have C.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to go into it already thinking we have 2 questionable.
I know.
But we hashed them out both for so long that I feel like we could be here all day.
I know. I agree with you.
I'm totally fine going over it a little more, but I also don't want to spend an hour beating a dead horse. So what do you think? Should we discuss it a little more, or should we?
Well, now that we've gone back to it, let's just go back and see if we can give it the cursory look over really quick. Like, do you want to look at 15?
Yeah.
Or, no, not 15. 17, I guess, is the one we should look at, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Suppose there was a large increase in net exports. So now we are sending much more overseas because our dollar has dropped, right, in relative terms. If the Feds want to stabilize the output, we need to make the dollar
increase the value of it.
Right. So if
yes.
we increase the money supply, that will
I wonder if that's what you can Google instead of this. If the Fed wants to increase the value of our dollar,
Oh,
how would
okay.
we do
We do
that?
that really quick. That's a good question. Maybe that's a better question.
Or maybe we're just really off base, but
I don't think so. That part I'm pretty good on.
I think, yeah, I think we agree on that.
Holy cow, this is sometimes hard to find. They give you so many different possible things, you know?
Right.
When I selected to look into, it's got like a zillion little answers here. Let me go back to the other one. This one's like-
I guess another question would be, would the Fed increase the money supply to raise the value of the dollar? Okay, if they increase the money supply, the dollar you have today is going to be less valuable as time goes on.
If you increase the money supply, the dollar's worth less?
Well, I'm not sure that increased spending.
See, I think that if they increase the number of
Spending, the
dollars,
Fed needs
it
to
brings down
increase the money
value of
supply.
dollar.
Yeah, okay, increasing the money circulation. This says to increase the money circulation, to increase spending, the Fed needs only to increase the money supply.
To increase
It can do this by creating dollars or bonds or this or that, but it circulates. The money in circulation rises, so too will the value of it. So yeah, I think A. We've been toying with it, but I think A is a safe bet.
well, that's kind of
We
where
agree.
then you were just reaffirming what we came up with before, because we kind of settled on A,
Yeah.
and what you're finding kind of
Yeah, we kind of
reaffirms that.
agree that. Yeah, we agree that we need to increase the value of our dollar. To do so, we also agree now that we would need to increase the money supply. So yes, I would say A. I feel pretty good about that.
And if we took this quiz and got 19 out of 20, I don't feel comfortable enough thinking, oh, it must be D to change it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We might have missed something
Yeah.
else. Like I feel like that one's like, oh, that's definitely the one we missed.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, if you want, I will go to my office really quick and be the first one to turn this in, and I can either call you or email you to tell you what I got on real quick. I don't have a problem doing that at all. I just can't take.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind whatever you think.
I don't want you to be the one that always has to take the first hit though, so I don't mind at all. If you just give me like 15 minutes, I could either call you or text you or.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, let me give you my number.
Sure. Once you got it.
Okay, it's 208 447
Okay.
8078.
Okay. Give me a few minutes. I'll call you back with it or text you back with it real quick.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. Good talking to you.
Okay, good to see you. Hey, good luck with the end of the semester. It's our
Yeah, you
last
too.
one, so.
Okay. That's right.
Okay,
It is.
thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.